All right, welcome back. In this particular video, we're going to consider the various data sources. So previously, we've got to know the attributes, the type of the various types of data, right? So now what we're going to deal with is the various sources of data, right? So we're going to consider the various sources of data. So basically, what we do now in the real life is either the company that you're working for is having their own database that you have a lot of data there that you'll be working with, or they will be getting the data from a third party, right? So if the company, right, if the company is having their own data, right, if the company is having their own data that they've collected from, based on the customers, right, that they have. So in the banking, for instance, based on the customers that they have, they've collected some data, right, based on the forms that they fill and some questionnaires that they fill, right, some behaviors that they do regarding maybe withdrawals and stuff like that, right? So they've based on that to collect number of data. Okay, so if they have their own data, right, that becomes the primary data, right? That is the data they have collected by themselves, right? That's the data the organization has conducted, right? That's the data they've collected by themselves. So that becomes the first data, the primary data that they will be working with. Okay, so you as a data scientist, the first source of data is the data that the organization is having. Okay. However, most organizations don't have as much data to make to build algorithms on or to make decisions with, right? So, for instance, if it's kind of a startup that is starting up, right? So they might not be having much data to actually work with. So what you can actually do is to look for secondary data, right? That is data that other organizations, right, or third party is actually having. So you can make good use of it. So this can come from maybe some government departments, some institutions like Gartner or McKinsey, right? Or maybe other, for instance, if we take the banking system, for instance, you can actually get it from other banks, right? You can get the data from other banks, right? Just by reaching out to them, right? You can get some kind of non-sensitive data. If they can release that to you, you can work on that. So, but that becomes a secondary data, right? That becomes a secondary data to work with. All right, so these are the two sources of data that you can actually get. So if the company is having their own data, that becomes the primary data. If they are not having it, you you look for the source of the data from different or third-party sources, right? And that becomes a secondary data. Okay, so I hope you have an intuition of the difference between what primary data is and what secondary data is. All right, so let's move on to the next concept that we need to discuss here. So in this particular class, right, we're going to divide our statistics into two main categories, right? We're going to consider this into two main categories. That is descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. Okay, inferential statistics. So talking of descriptive statistics, so let's actually take these one by one and then break them down, right? Let's take them one by one and then break them down. So descriptive statistics provide descriptions, right? They provide description of the population. So for instance, if you want to see what is the mean of the population, right? So what is the mean, right? What is the mean of the population, or what kind of age group actually, let me actually write it here. Right, so let me do this, right? So as I said, we have this. I deleted this, so let me bring it back. Okay. So now, if you want to see, the mean of the data, right? If you want to see the mean of the data, right? So you're providing some sort of a description, right? You just want some description, so that becomes descriptive. Or maybe what kind of age group appears the most. So for instance, we can say that India is having a young age group, right? So that's young, right? Which means that maybe age between say 18 and 30, right? They are the major population that is in India, right? If you take Italy, for instance, most of them are old age, right? So maybe in that case we will be having maybe from say 45 to maybe 70, right? So most of them are around that age. Okay, so in that case we are providing some descriptions, right? We are providing some descriptions of the population, right? Providing some descriptions over the population. Let me move this one here. Okay, we are providing some descriptions over the population. So That is basically what descriptive statistics is, right? We're describing our data, right? So we are describing the Indian population as a young population, right? So if we take it in that case, we are giving age groups that most of the people are in the range of this age, right? So that becomes a young population, right? It becomes a young population, unlike maybe Italy, where most of the population are old age, right? Something like that, okay? Okay, so in this case, we are providing some kind of a description over the data. Okay, so that becomes descriptive statistics, and there are several ways to do this, right? There are several ways to actually do this. And we're going to see a lot of them using graphs and tables and charts, a lot of them as we proceed in this course. Okay, if we talk about inferential statistics, okay, if we talk about inferential statistics, as the name is, we are inferring, right? We are getting some information, right? We are inferring. So basically what we do is that we infer from a sample data, right, and then make a general assertion or make a generalization on the larger population, right? For instance, if we want to make some generalizations about say the whole United States, right, the whole United States, then maybe we can pick some states, maybe New York, right? We can pick, say, New York. We can pick, say, maybe San Francisco, right? San Francisco, right? We can pick, say, Texas, right? So something like that, right? We can pick states like that, and then based on the information that we get from these states, right, we can make a generalization on this whole country, right? We can actually get to know this country better based on this sample that we got from the whole data. Okay, so we use sample to make inference about the larger population. Okay, we take sample to make conclusions on the larger population. All right, so basically that's what inferential statistics help us to do, using sample, right? Using sample to gain understanding of the population. Okay, using sample to gain understanding of the population is what inferential statistics is, and describing your data based on some kind of a descriptions, right, is what we refer to as the descriptive statistics, right? That is making description of your data, describing your data in a certain condition, given a certain condition. Okay, is what we refer to as descriptive statistics. Okay, so having known this, having gotten to know this, right, we actually going to proceed from here, and then we're going to talk about the various common statistical terms that we're going to meet over and over again as we proceed in this course. Okay, so let's get started with this now. Over here we're talking about population, then we're talking about sample, then we're talking about parameter, then we talk about statistic. Okay, so we were talking about sample and the population earlier on when we were talking about descriptive and inferential statistics. Okay, so let's get to know this better. Right now, if we consider population, right? If we consider population is actually the whole data point that you have, right? So, for instance, if you take a country, for instance, so the whole United States of America, right, is the population, and if we take, say, New York, right? If we take, say, New York, right? If we take the population of New York is part of USA. Okay, so New York becomes a sample. Right? New York becomes a sample, and the whole United States becomes population. Okay, the whole United States becomes population. Don't forget, inside New York, we can also have different cities, right? Different cities that we can actually get. So if we take New York, for instance, right? New York can also be a population, and inside New York, we can also get several samples in there. Right, we can get several samples in there, and even these samples, right, can also be a population on its own, where we can also get several samples in there. Okay, where we can get, if we take, say, India, for instance, right? If we take India, for instance, India becomes a population. Okay, India becomes the whole population that we can talk about. Okay, and if we take, say, Delhi, right? If we take, say, Delhi, for instance, right? Delhi, it becomes a sample of the Indian population. Okay, population of Delhi is a sample of population of India. Okay, however, if we go into Delhi too, we have maybe Haryana, right? We have, say, Haryana, we have, say, Gurgaon. Several. We have Noida, right? So these ones become subset of Delhi, right? They also become subset of Delhi, right? However, if you go to, say, Haryana, right, you might have different cities like the Bahadurgarh, right? Something like that. right? This becomes a sample of this Haryana also, okay? And even if you go to Bahadurgarh can also be another population. It can also be a population where inside Bahadurgarh you can also see that we have maybe let me think of a city there, right? Maybe you have say Sarai, right? You have say Sarai there, so that becomes also a subset of this city, right? It becomes a subset of this city. So a sample can also be a population on its own. So depending on what you're considering, right? Depending on if you're considering the whole country, then a particular city or a particular state can be a sample of the whole country, right? And if you're considering the state as the population, then inside the state, the various cities will be samples, right? If you're considering the cities, then inside the cities, the various towns inside the cities will also be a sample of the city. Okay, so a sample can also be a population on its own. What you need to know is that a subset of a whole is a sample. Okay, so if we have let me clear this. So if we have this whole, right, this is what you're considering, whether it's the population of a country or whether it's the population of a class or whether it's a count of a product or something like that, right? So the whole of this, right, the whole of this, so maybe the whole of this becomes the population, right? The whole of this becomes the populations. I'm just shortening it, right? And then inside this population we have what is called a sample. So that's a sample is just part or a subset of the population. Okay, so that's basically what you need to know when we talk about population and then sample. Okay, now let's talk about parameter, right? Let's talk about parameter. Parameter is nothing but a numerical quantity or characteristics that we give to the population, right? So for instance, if you give a parameter, right, or if you give a condition that I want to measure the number of visitors, right? I want to measure the number of visitors that come to my website, right? So number of visitors. Okay, that's the number of visitors that come to my website. That's what you are interested in. This becomes your parameter. Okay, this becomes your parameter. Now, if you find out the number of visitors that come to your website, right? If you find out the number of visitors that come to your website, maybe per minute or maybe per month, right? Maybe per month. So maybe what you're interested in is the number of visitors that come to your website per month. That is the parameter here. Right, that becomes your parameter. Okay, that's the parameter that we're talking about. Now, if you find out the number of visitors that come or visit to your website or visit your website per month, right? Maybe you can find that maybe 10,000 visitors come to your website, right? This 10,000 becomes statistic. Okay, that's the statistic over here. All right, so the parameter that you set, right? Out of the parameter, you can find something out of the parameter. Okay, so the values that you get is what we refer to as the statistic. Okay, that statistic is just nothing but a number or the value, right? The value which is associated with an observed sample. So if we say that, okay, the population in Delhi is say maybe say 5 million, right? If we say 5 million, right? If we say 5 million, this 5 million becomes the statistic. Okay, that becomes what we refer to as the statistic. Okay, but however, if you want to know the average age, right? If you're interested in finding the average age of maybe the people in Delhi, right? The average age of the people in Delhi, that becomes the parameter that you have set. All right. So I hope you have a good intuition about this. So in the next video, what we're going to talk about, right? In the next video, what we're going to talk about is frequency distribution, right? So we're going to start with frequency distribution in the next video. All right, so see you in the next video.